Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back with you with another edition of Rudy's Common Sense. And this time, like we did a few months ago, we're going to have a special edition. We thought it really worked and really enjoyed it, and it was a question and answer period. And we've had a group of them sent in, and we selected 7 or 8 to answer. And hopefully, sometime in the future, very near future, we'll be able to do this live. But let me go with the ones we have here on the computer. And then we're going to work real hard to see if we can do one of these live sessions so we can have real conversation. So the first question was submitted by, albeit a friend of mine, but very special one, Steve Bannon. This is a special guest question from Steve Bannon. You've given more in the process to protect both President Trump and the presidency itself. What inner strength do you call upon? Well, now, this sounds like the kind of question they would ask President Biden, which embarrasses me a bit. But it's a good question. And the reality is it has been very, very trying and very difficult because from the moment I undertook the representation of Donald Trump, which I did as a lawyer, and I did not only because he was my friend, but because he was the president of the United States. And I was, as Steve Bannon knows, peculiarly in the position of knowing he was innocent. And I find it very difficult to watch any man who's innocent being pursued for a thing he didn't do. He did not collude with the Russians. Since I worked on the campaign, I'm not going to say I was the closest person to him, but within the first 5, right? I probably was with him the most because it was my job to travel with him. And I'm an excellent investigator. So had he been colluding with the Russians, I would have known it. Had he been talking with the Russians, I would have known it. And then all of a sudden, these charges come out of nowhere. Very, very quickly, as I examined them, I realized they were false, and I realized where they had come from. Because I know in great detail just exactly how dishonest and crooked Hillary Clinton is and her husband. They had been selling out the United States with the Clinton Foundation for years. They'd gotten themselves in the $100 million to $1 billion category, selling influence. And I realized this was a setup. So I undertook to represent him. Do you know the Justice Department? That was the first day that they dated when they went and took my iCloud account without telling me. Can you imagine taking the iCloud account of a lawyer on the first day that he begins representing his client? Whatever happened to the right to counsel? Well, that's neither here nor there. So, Steve, to really give you an answer to it, the strength that it gives me as being an American, I don't believe ultimately I was just representing President Trump. I was representing the presidency. Ultimately, I was representing the values that we think we have as Americans, the rights, because ad seriatim, they were being taken away. They took away every right an American citizen has from him. The right to counsel, the right to cross-examine witnesses, the right to present witnesses, the right to privacy. And when they finally raided my law office, I think I was the 3rd Trump lawyer whose law office they raided, I realized these people are completely out of control. I mean, they're the usual restraint that decent American prosecutors have because of the oath they take to uphold the Constitution had been lost in this pathology of Trump derangement syndrome. And we were dealing with a bunch of zealots and might as well have been in East Germany before the wall came down. So that gives you a great deal of strength. And then with regard to myself, it gives me a great deal of strength. I didn't do anything wrong. I did exactly what I was supposed to do as a lawyer, and they've tried to distort it. They've tried to attack me for things that never happened, that I never did. And so far, they haven't found a liar who's willing to subscribe to it. But they're trying, which is very, very sad. But we're going to get past it. And when we do, and they get the defeat they deserve, maybe the country can go back to, we treat everybody the same, we treat everybody fairly. All those very, very good Democrats will have people to represent them who aren't crooks like the 30-year Biden crime family, or the shysters from Arkansas, who began, shaking people down for a few bucks, then were shaking down the world. Money from Russia, so Russia could get nuclear material. Can you believe that? Well, Trumps didn't do that. If the Trumps had done it, they'd have been executed. The Clintons did that. Money from the crookedest man in Ukraine, so that Joe Biden could fix the case. The Trumps didn't do that. Biden did it. And it's on the hard drive. That's why they work so hard to censor it. That's why they banned the oldest newspaper in America when they had the guts to print it. Just look at these things. And when you look at them, you're going to realize the tremendous damage they've done to us, and that we just have to fight back if we want to take our country back and keep it from becoming a socialist dictatorship, which is where they're heading for. Now we will take a short break. How much equity do you have in your home? 50,000? 100,000? More? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity you have, the greater the chance foreign and domestic criminals will come after you. Title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes. Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is alerting homeowners they could already be a victim and not know it. Here's how it goes down. First, cyber thieves search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes. Next, they pull your home's title that's online. They forge your signature stating you sold your home, and they take out loans using your equity. You're not covered by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Protect your most valuable asset. Register your address now to see if you're already a victim and receive a complete title history of your home. A $100 value free. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Welcome back, and let's get back to our questions. The next one is from Chad Curtis, who says, how can we stop the insane vax passports in New York City and prevent them from spreading? This is issue number one. I gather Chad went on to ask other ones, but somehow our editors decided not to answer those. But when we have another one, Chad, I'll take a look and see if they were equally as good as that one. Only place we can stop them is in court. This is another thing that's been forgotten in the out-and-out assault on our Constitution by the Bidens and the Democrats. The government has no power. The government's power comes from the Constitution. And anything not given to it by the Constitution, the federal government doesn't have that power. That power then goes to the states, or really to you, the people. So the government doesn't have the power to tell you to take a vaccine or not take a vaccine, or what kind of medicine you should take or how you should take it. If they can demonstrate a dire, overwhelming emergency, then they can justify the right for a short period of time to issue emergency declarations that interfere with your decision about your health. Like the government can't tell you the number of children you should have, unless it becomes China, right? And the government can't tell you, like I had prostate cancer. The government can't say, oh, you have to have radiation, but not an operation, because we've decided one is better than the other, or one is cheaper than the other. Or if you do that, more people can have it. So, we did have what was regarded as a once-in-a-century emergency. We probably exaggerated it, by the way. I'm not going to say it wasn't terrible and very, very dangerous, but there's no question we hyped it a bit. But I'll tell you what we really hyped. What we really hyped was once we started coming out of it. And now it's as if the Democrat governors, some of whom have become nothing really different than little Mussolinis, they don't want to give up the power. They got this great power. They got it only because there was an emergency. Well, I don't want to take their little game away from them, but there's no longer an emergency. Do you know what the fatality rate is for COVID-19, or what I call CCP virus? Do you have any idea what it is? In New York, 0.003. I'll put it into perspective. For people below the age of 40, they have a much greater chance they'll be hit by a car. Without any doubt, much greater chance they're going to die. Anybody of cancer. Think of all the cancer treatment that were held up because people were locked in like prisoners. You know how many appointments were missed? I saw somewhere 4 million. Might be right, might be wrong, a lot. You know what happens when you miss an appointment for cancer or examination of your heart? Sometimes you drop dead. You, if you're of any age at all, you probably know stories of people who went to the doctor, they got a great cardiogram, they came home and 2 days later they died. We don't know what the hour of the day is. I know people that have shown up for cardiograms and 2 hours later they're on the operating table because they had a 98% blockage. How many of those people didn't go to the doctor? Because there was no doctor to go to. Hospitals, many of them ignorantly didn't treat other illnesses rather than divide their hospital into segregated unit and not. Some hospitals were not intimidated by Fauci. So I don't see any justification that the government has to require you to get a vaccination passport. The illness is not serious enough. Even with the Delta variant, the fatality rate has remained stable for 4 months. For the country, 0.009. For New York, 0.003. For Washington, D.C., 0.006. Now, you go calculate the chances. I'll give you another example. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, my chance of dying was about 40 times that. 40 times. I didn't get locked in for 8 months while I was treated, right? Or given the fact that your chance of getting killed by a car is much greater than CCP virus, then kids should be locked in until they're 40 years old or something. They shouldn't be allowed to go on the street. We cannot prevent people from being exposed to the risks that exist in existing. And the reason we're doing it under the guise of these people who want to take away your rights. Boy, did they love taking away the right of going to church. Whew, man. Cuomo was found guilty of that twice by courts, but the Democrat media doesn't tell you that, of violating the right of freedom of religion. Newsom, I don't know if you ever saw that movie that was on cable, The Man in the High Tower, I think it is. It's as if Germany and Japan won World War II, and Germany possesses the eastern part of the country, and Japan possesses the western part of the country. A lot of it's California. Doesn't look very different than Gavin Newsom's California. They're dictating about as much as he does, which is maybe why he can be thrown out of office. So if they go ahead with this vaccination mandate, if they go ahead with this vaccination passport, then we got to have a class action, go into court, and seeing if we can get some judges to vindicate our constitutional rights to make our decisions about our health, unless it is a catastrophic emergency. And if it was, that ended a long time ago. And it is now an excuse for autocracy. Number 3, from Jen Wagner. Millions are in support of you. We're so grateful for your honesty, your integrity, and everything you are doing to fight for the American people. That's again like a question to Joe Biden, but he wouldn't know the answer to it. I know the answer to it. Thank you. Let's move on. Time to take a short break. I accomplished a lot in 2020 exposing the truth, establishing the relationship with you, working tirelessly for America. And I came to know the work and value of the people at American Hartford Gold. You see, you buy gold not only for what you know, but you buy gold for what you don't know. American Hartford Gold is the company you can trust when it comes to buying gold. They sell physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside of your IRA. In the precious metals industry, they are the highest rated firm in our country with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. Give them a call and tell them Rudy sent you. And be sure to ask them what I bought. And if you call them right now, they will give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. Folks, these are uncertain times. The one thing you can count on to protect what you have worked so hard for is physical gold and silver. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 833-GOLD-777. That's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Again, that's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Thank you for returning. Number 5, Tyler Scaglione. See, I can pronounce Scaglione. I wonder why. Tyler wants to know, what can a future mayor, Adams or Sliwa, do to stop the crime spread in New York? Can they do some of the things that I did to save New York? Well, they can do all the things that I did to save New York and more, because more things have been invented since then. I mean, most of it's common sense, and much of it comes from other people, not just me. I just put it in one place. I mean, the broken windows theory. There's a wonderful article in the magazine for I think called City Journal this week about Professor James Q. Wilson of Harvard, who developed the broken windows theory, and basically how ignorant it was for de Blasio to disband it on the first day of office, in which I and the professor writing this book predicted he would have a crime wave. We have to excuse de Blasio because he's not smart enough to understand it. But other people are. I mean, de Blasio just looked at it and said, oh, why should I prosecute people for not paying a fare, or for doing or for doing graffiti, or why should I prosecute them just if they, steal a little bit of money, or why should I prosecute them if these are all too small, or why should I prosecute them if they're squeegee operators and go in the street and, actually, if you don't have them wash their window, they just slit your tire, big deal. Then eventually it became, why should we prosecute them if they just hit one old lady? I mean, they got to hit about 50 before they stay in jail. I'm going to tell you the reason you do it. The reason you do it because you have to teach people from the cradle to the grave, and right at the neighborhood level, they have to respect the law. That they can't do graffiti because it's not their property. Pretty simple rule, right? Remember, you can't take someone else's property. This is my door. If I don't want you to put your crap on it, you can't do it. Got it? Okay. And if you do, I get you arrested. That's kind of a basic that then establishes at a very early age you can't take somebody else's property. It creates a neighborhood in which we respect the rights of other people. I can go into a city, since my 8 years as mayor, I can tell you right away if it's a good mayor or a bad mayor. I can even tell you whether the mayor is a good person or a bad person. I can tell if it's a good mayor or a bad mayor by the orderliness of the city. Is there graffiti? Is there a lot of garbage in the street? Before I even look at people. I'll tell you how I know there's an evil mayor, bad mayor, no heart, no conscience, if there are homeless people. Mm-hmm. A mayor doesn't tolerate homeless people. Not for the reason you immediately think, but for the reason that it's a complete inhumane reaction to a person's plight. I'm going to let people die on the streets of my city? I don't care who they are. They're not going to die on the streets because that's what happens on the streets. You die. This study is almost universal. Been done in New York when I was mayor, before I was mayor, and since. Probably applies exactly today. No more than 10 to 15% of the people on the street fit into the category that the advocates for homelessness who make money from it would like you to believe. Just can't find a place to live. They are the easiest people to deal with in a big city. We have plenty of places to live. If I approached a homeless person, as I did, every single one, with a police officer and sometimes a social worker, and I said, you're here tonight. What's the problem? He said, I don't have any place to live. I said, I got 5 places for you. Get rid of that problem in 2 nights. Here's the rest of the homeless population. About 20 to 30% minimum, 40% by some calculations, are mentally ill. They're paranoid schizophrenics at various stages of paranoid schizophrenia. The remaining percentage divide up between drug addicts and alcoholics and severe ones who are like Hunter Biden, addicted all their lives and somehow enabled by a parent like Joe Biden, who's just a very bad parent. So that's the universe you're dealing with. You're dealing with a few people without significant problems who have lost their way and are down in their luck, let's put it that way. The easiest people to deal with, and then people with very significant problems. Now I want you to do something else that's really necessary in judging the morality of government. I always did it. I'm going to treat the people in the city the way I treat my relatives. So here's the question. If you get a call tonight and you find out your brother is on the streets of New York and he's been there for a week, you just haven't been in touch with him, and nobody can get him to leave the streets of New York, what do you do? Do you ignore him like Mayor de Blasio did for millions of people, bringing back homelessness after Bloomberg and I had pretty much solved it? Well, I wrote an op-ed piece about him a couple of years ago saying he was a bad man. He wasn't a good person because he let that happen. A good man or woman is hounded by the fact that there are homeless people, and they find a way to fix it. So whenever you go in the city, you see a lot of homeless people. They've got a very bad mayor. I don't care what party. They got a very bad mayor. They got a mayor who doesn't love people. Because you confront every person on the street the way you would confront a loved one, right? If your brother was on the street, you wouldn't go to sleep at night and just leave him there, or your sister, right? You'd go there. You wouldn't give him the money to stay on the street, would you? If you did, it's probably somebody you don't like very much. You'd say, hey, Ralph, Joanne, whatever. I know things are bad, and you lost your job, and your wife threw you out, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? Or you've been drinking a little too much, or you're not taking your medicines. So let's go find a place. Let's get a nice place to sleep tonight. Let's go see the doctor or a doctor. Let's go get a nice evaluation tomorrow. This isn't the place to be. And if he refused to come, I don't know, I'd kind of make him come. For his good, not mine. I'd rather stay home and sleep. So that's what I did when I was mayor. And the problem I wasn't supposed to solve, I solved. I got the homeless people off the street. And I got almost all of them treated. And some of them just left New York because they didn't want to deal with it. And so now some other good mayor, we're going to have to deal with that. I could just do what I could do if you came within my jurisdiction. Bloomberg kept that pretty much stable, as he did with the prostitutes off the streets, the drug dealers off the streets. You just didn't see them for 20 years. And man, are they back now. Because we don't just have a bad mayor. We got the worst one in the history of the city. Almost universally accepted. So I would say the next mayor should adopt what I did. he shouldn't even say it, because if he says he adopted what I did, they would say he adopted a Republican program. It wasn't a Republican program. My predecessor, LaGuardia, who was a Republican, used to say there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage. And there isn't. It's just the right way to do it, the most efficient way to do it. There is a Republican or Democratic way, it's turning out now, to reduce crime. Unfortunately, the modern progressive Democrats encourage crime and stand with the criminals. Big time. Black Lives Matter. If you're still fooled by Black Lives Matter, there's something wrong with you. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist communist organization founded by two self-acknowledged communists. They firmly believe in destroying the American family because they think that men are extremely damaging in a marriage. And they think women are subjugated because of marriage. They want to do away with marriage. Marriage is like Marxist suppression. This all comes from Patrisse Cullors and Garcia and the people who established it, who don't lie like a lot of the other Democrats lie about being Marxist. They straight out now tell you they are very well educated and very disciplined Marxists. Patrisse Cullors is such a disciplined Marxist that she's already jumped the gun. See, what happens with Marxism and socialism is everybody gets paid the same. To each from each according to their ability, to each according to their means. That's Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. I want you to examine that for a minute. So I work real hard, and you haven't worked in 10 years. And they take from me and my family, and they give it to you, which means you'll never work. How long am I going to stand that? I'm going to stand it only so long as I can do away with it. And the minute I do away with it, you try to kill me, because there is somebody running this. You see, somebody runs this system. That person becomes a potentate. That person becomes a dictator, and that person becomes very rich. Now, Patrisse Cullors didn't become very rich like Stalin and Hitler and Castro and Mr. Z in China, or Putin, who's the richest man in Russia. She didn't wait until she got in power. She went and got very rich already. You get an idea what a perverse system this is? I know you all know that communism does away with God, because God's a problem for communism or socialism, because then there's a duty higher than listening to the comrade. But maybe you don't believe in God. I don't. I do, but maybe you don't. So I'm not going to appeal to you based on God. I bet you believe in the family, though. Well, the second biggest danger to communism and socialism is the family, because maybe those parents will tell you something different than the comrade in the school wants to tell you. You see the battle going on right now with critical race theory, don't you? And the 1619 Project. This is not by accident. This is by design, and it is by plan. We have to be ready to fight this. To fight it, we have to understand it. And I think the next mayor should take over all of my programs and deny that they come from me. Because, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, I was the most successful mayor in the history of the city. No one ever reduced crime anywhere close to what I did. No one ever saved any more lives than I did. And there hasn't been one around the country that's done it. When I came into office, we were averaging 2,000 murders a year. I reduced that by 65%. 75% of the people I saved were African American. I saved much more lives than the phony African American politicians who do nothing for the terrible neighborhoods they represent and become multimillionaires. I knew who they were, and I just disregarded and stepped all over them, including Al Sharpton. They didn't bother me one bit, because if I listened to them, Harlem would still be the horrible mess it was under Charlie Rangel, who just happened to accumulate about $25 million and did nothing for Harlem. So I would say if the next mayor is Curtis Sliwa, or if it's Eric Adams, you do exactly what I did. You can say it came from LaGuardia. It probably did, because I probably borrowed it from him. It came from common sense. You enforce the law. You enforce it equally. You do away with all this victimization nonsense. You get racism the heck out of New York City. There's no such thing in America anymore as racism except among a few sick people, and we can put them in jail. This is not a systemically racist country. If you think it is, leave. Because if you think we're a systemically racist country, you know what that means? I'm not sure Joe Biden knows what it means. He says it all the time, but I don't think Joe knows. I should be more respectful of our president. I can't. I'm sorry. I've known him for so long, and I know you probably think I made this up, but I was introduced to him by a law school classmate who told me he was the dumbest kid in the law school class and that he cheated to get through the last year of law school. Now, we know he plagiarized illegally or improperly in the last year of law school and then as a senator. So why are you so surprised that he's a crook? He was cheating in law school. But in any event, here's what really gets me angry about him. When he says my country, his country, is systemically racist. Here's what it means, Joe. Systemically means universal. It means all of us. Systemic means it has enveloped the entire system. It's infected the entire system. It means that the overwhelming majority of us are racist. If the overwhelming majority of America is racist, then we're evil. Why would anybody want to come here? How did we elect Barack Hussein Obama? If we are overwhelmingly racist, would you take that back? Would you concede that an overwhelmingly racist country would not elect a black man president? I don't know if you realize the horrible attack you're making on America when you do that. And then it gets quoted back to you by the dictator of China. And two Chinese diplomats just beat the living daylights out of two of your diplomats with your quotes. So take over my programs, use them, and say they're not. But they work, and they work a lot better than what's going on right now, which is chaos and a crime epidemic in some ways worse than I ever dealt with because it's come on so quickly. The numbers are not as high as they were then, not at all. But we've never had this quick an increase in crime. I'm an expert on crime statistics, so let me give you this one and let it sink in. Last year, we set a record for a year-over-year increase in murder and shootings in America and in New York. 50% more murders in 1 year. 100% more shootings. That never happened before, not even close. It's happening all over America now. And in almost every case, it's happening in a city controlled by Democrats. Why anybody in Chicago would vote for a Democrat? 50 years, Democrat mayors. Every weekend, it's a question of, will there be 70 shootings, 80, 90, or 100? 10 people dead, 20 people dead, 25 people dead, 80% of which are black. What have the African-American and other politicians, Democrat of Chicago, done about it in 50 years? Just gotten it worse. If you vote for them, there's something wrong, isn't there? Some kind of brainwashing going on. Now, we're not going to fix this country until we get over that brainwashing. We'll be back in just a moment. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code Rudy for these great specials. That's MyPillow.com and use the promo code Rudy. Thank you for returning. Let's see, we'll do one more question. Teresa Living Good. What if that's a real name? Teresa Living Good. If I married Teresa Living Good, I think I'd change my name. Mr. and Mrs. Living Good. And if I was like one of those like really ambitious politicians, if they're going to run for office, imagine if maybe I'd won the Republican nomination and beat Obama if my name had been Rudy Living Good. What do you think? Okay, we're just kidding around. Ms. Living Good, and I would like her to communicate with her, because if this is your name, then I'm going to apologize to you, because it's quite a beautiful name, but I just can't help taking, a few little jokes about it. Is it legal for an employer to threaten your job if you don't get the COVID-19 vaccine? I have filed for religious exemption, but have not heard anything yet. Fascinating question. This is a very complicated legal question, Teresa. It's a complicated legal question for a couple of reasons. I would say if you were asking me, is it legal for the government to do it? I'd say you got a good case, the government can't do it, for a couple of reasons. Number one, remember, and this is why this outrage of people not getting vaccinated or vaccine, I've actually seen vaccinated. So any of you English professors and PhDs, tell me, is it vaccinated or vaccinated? So if it's the government, see, all those rights you have in the Bill of Rights are against the government, not your friends and neighbors, not private individuals. And theoretically, not against big companies. Now that I think has to change, but that's a different story. So if the government is saying you have to be vaccinated or vaccinated, it needs to have a reasonable basis for it. This is what I was going to do my show on, the one before this one, but then I got all upset about the way in which the Attorney General in New York trashed the Constitution. The government has to have a reasonable basis, more than that, to take away your rights. So you get the right to determine what medicines you take, what medicines you don't take. Government can only interfere if there's an overwhelming public need for that. And the question is, with the current fatality rates of COVID-19, or I call it CCP virus, which means Chinese Communist Party virus, because I don't want you ever to forget where it comes from. It comes from China. I know they accused Trump of being a xenophobe when he said it, but they accused Trump of being a xenophobe because a lot of them do business with the Chinese government, and they don't have the guts. I was going to use another word when I hang around with my pals, but they don't have the guts to go after China the way they should, which is another problem you got. So if the government did it, I think we would have a good lawsuit against them, that they have violated your rights. They violated your rights under the Bill of Rights, and that they can't show a reasonable basis for it with a fatality rate that's no greater than many, many other illnesses, where they're not allowed to invade your rights and tell you what to do. I mean, could the government ban smoking with the connection between smoking and cancer? That is a better question than this, because more people die of cancer than this. But okay, what about a private employer? A private employer, I'm sorry to tell you, is different. A private employer can pretty much set down whatever rules they want. Now, if the rules become so onerous and so unfair, then you can do something about it. So that one, I'm going to have to tell you to consult with your lawyer, because I can't give you just right off the top. We'd have to come up with a pretty interesting legal theory on that one, and particularly if the employer somehow does business with the government, then we could, or as a quasi-government agency, or like the arguments they're making now about big tech, that they really are an arm of the government, and therefore should be treated as such. But you're just not going to clearly get to that subject. What you're clearly going to get to is your employer is acting in a dictatorial way. The medicine that is the vaccine is not approved by the FDA. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that means. So I ask. Normally, you don't approve a medicine for a couple of years. So why don't you approve a medicine for a couple of years? Because some of the side effects, sometimes even fatal ones, don't come out for 1 or 2 years. Does that make sense? That makes sense, right? So I would be willing to take the risk and take the vaccine. You can ask me, why didn't I do it? Because I had COVID and I have antibodies and I get them checked every 2 weeks. And I am now reading in the literature that my immunity may be greater than from a vaccine, much more powerful. Also makes sense, doesn't it? If it's natural as opposed to synthetic, that it's going to be more powerful. I mean, this is the way the human race survived for thousands and thousands of years. These things have been around and we survive by natural immunity. This is all synthetic immunity. But in any event, I would get it because I think the chance that there's going to be some thing that emerges a year or two from now is very, very small, since it fits in a class of vaccines where that hasn't happened. But that still can unnerve a lot of people. You're asking them to take a medicine that isn't approved by everything else FDA has to approve. This one, you're going to force them to take even though it isn't approved. So I think you have to leave some room for individual decision making. Now, if the fatality rate was still 6% and not 0.009, I'd say okay, but it's not. We need somebody who can come in and calm everybody down and say, this was a terrible thing that happened, but it's now, don't get all upset, it's now just another disease. I know we want the blanket, but it's just, and there are some that kill you more than that one. Finally, one of the reasons the administration is having such great difficulty in getting people to do any of this is because they lie. They tell you how dangerous this is not to wear a mask. They tell you how bad it is not to get vaccinated. And last month, they apprehended 183,000 people in the southwest border. They set a good percentage of them free. Overwhelming majority were not tested for CCP virus or COVID. And a few were offered the vaccine and a large percentage of them turned it down. Few were vaccinated, but most weren't. And then they put them on buses and they sent them to American cities to spread CCP virus, if this is what they believe. Let me make it worse for you. It is well known, I think this was established by several universities, but I have the article if you want to see it. For every single person that comes in and is apprehended, 2.2 people, I don't know what, a 0.2 person is, but 2.2 people come in who are not detected. That makes sense, right? If the border is that open, I don't know if you ever saw how big the border is, but if the border is that open and we catch 183,000 and we're not perfect, I never realized it was 2.2. Maybe it was less when I was in charge of the immigration service. So if 183,000 came in last month, we know that because we apprehended them, and the factor is 2.2, about 400,000 others came in and we never got to see them. I mean, they could be walking around with 101 temperature and coughing like crazy. We don't know who they are, but we know where they came from. They came from below Mexico. Mexico's vaccination rate, I think, is 17%. You know what it is in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras? Well, I don't even want to check. That's the third world, ladies and gentlemen. We're letting 400,000 people into this country based on Biden's change of Trump's control of the border. We're letting them in, and you know who approves they're coming in here? The Mexican cartels. The Mexican government has given up. The U.S. doesn't approve, we never get to see them, and they're walking around our cities. And nobody cares. So then it's hard for people to accept you care so much about me when we got 400,000 people plus from the third world walking around who are probably much more infected than we are and probably have new variants that we haven't heard of yet, and you're not doing a damn thing about it. So until they gain credibility, you cannot lead in a crisis. I led any number of crises, any number of emergencies, and I led one really big one. And you can't lead if you don't have credibility, and you can't lead if you're lying. This administration has us in chaos. It has us in chaos at the border. It has us in chaos with regard to vaccines, masks. I don't even know who's making the decisions. But this better get straightened out fast. About the only place we can go right now are the courts. Pretty soon, we can go to the polling place. So this is Rudy Giuliani. I really thank you for the questions. We're really going to try very, very hard to do some of these live because I think it's so much more interesting. I love doing it on my radio show live, and I never get to do enough calls. So someday maybe I'll just sit there all day and take calls. Think I'd get callers if I sat there all day and took calls? Well, we could find out, okay? But don't lose heart. America is a great country. I travel all around the country. There are more people that are, believe me, there are more people. I don't think there are more people that are Republican or Trump or whatever. There are more people that agree on these basic values than you realize. And when we get over this anger that's been created, we're going to realize Democrat, Republican, whatever the heck, you believe in these values of due process and government has to be limited and government can't get too powerful. That's why we broke away from England. And you believe this is a great country. You know we're not perfect, and you know we did bad things. But every other country did a lot worse, right? And this is about as good as it gets. Why do we have those 400,000 people coming in? They don't go anywhere else. Doesn't that contradict everything these progressive Democrats are saying? If we're so bad, why are they all coming here? And by the way, if we're so bad, that we're evil and terrible, why don't they go pick another country? AOC should tell me what country's better, AOC. I'll pay for you to go there. Yeah. And I bet I could find people far richer than me to pay for all you to go there. If we're systemically racist, go to a place that isn't. If we're terrible to the poor, go to a place that's better to the poor. Good luck. And let me know. I'm serious about the offer, okay? But I'm sure most of you agree this is the greatest country on earth. So tomorrow morning, when you get up, kneel down, say a little prayer, thank God you're in America. And if you don't believe in God, say a prayer anyway. It can't hurt. I think it was Kant who said it's better to bet on God than against God. Because if there is no God, no skin off your nose. But if there is a God, you bet against him. Whew. So say a prayer. Thank you. And we'll be back very shortly with another Rudy's Common Sense.